So let me introduce you to Dee. She is passionate about equipping people to shine the light of Jesus. She believes that everyone has a unique light to shine into the world, and we can all learn to shine our lights in the unique way that God created us to. She is also a retired Paralympian who spent 13 years representing Canada internationally. She even went to Tokyo, and she knows what it's like to live a life that is different, but has found so much purpose in the life God has designed for her. Welcome, Dee. Thank you so much for being here.
What an introduction. Wow. I'm so glad to be here with you guys today.
Girl, like once I found you on the interwebs, I was like, I have to meet this girl. Like she is so radiant. I know our community is going to like absolutely love her. So thanks for being on today.
That's one of those great things about the internet, I guess, that it does really truly connect so many people and connect our stories together. So very exciting.
For sure. To your bio, I'm also going to add that you recently got married.
I did, yes, in August. My husband Kevin. Very exciting.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about how you guys met and your
Yeah,
marriage
so
and all that.
so we met when we were quite young. I think it was like 2007, but we weren't really friends. We knew of each other, but we didn't know who each other were really. I don't even think we really ever said anything to each other growing up. But my husband has the same type of dwarfism that I have, so that basically just means that we just don't grow. I like to say we hit our level of perfection a little sooner than most people,
I love
just
that.
to make a little joke about that. But we met at a conference called Little People of America. And basically, that's once a year, everyone who has dwarfism can come and you just spend a week together getting to share, stories, just get to be around people who look like you. And so we met through that and then kind of just grew up separately. Again, didn't talk to each other at all. But then once you hit puberty and you start to notice that oh, he's kind of cute. Oh, he looks a little different now. We started to, just kind of keep each other in our minds, I guess. And then in COVID, when you couldn't go anywhere, I wasn't traveling for swimming. You don't really have much to do. So we just started chatting and then realized we had a lot more in common than we thought. And now we're married. So that all worked out quite well.
Yeah. And you guys are doing some really cool things together. I saw that you recently launched a podcast, which is called A Little More Light. Is that
A
right?
little more light. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, we'll be sure to link to it in our show notes on our website. So, Dee, will you just share a little bit more about your story and please share your testimony with us as well?
Yeah. So, like I said, I grew up with a disability. I grew up with dwarfism, and I'm the only one in my family who looks the way I do. And so, growing up with such a physical difference, you know that you are different, and there are just things that you can't do as easily. But my parents were really great at just always reminding me, that God loves you, God has a plan for your life. And I grew up in a Christian home, and so that was a blessing. But I wouldn't say that I was necessarily following God. Like I knew who God was. I went to church. I knew that He loved me. I knew that, I was fearfully and wonderfully made. Like I knew that stuff, but I don't know if I really understood fully what that meant. And then it wasn't until I got older that I really had to make a decision for myself of, okay, am I going to just continue going through life and life's getting hard? People are mean. People are staring more. People are taking my pictures. Do I really believe that God is who He says He is? And then I just decided that, I think I do. I really think I still believe this, but I don't know that much about God. So I better figure out what what He's saying about me and what these truths really do mean. And so when I was 19, I started taking my faith just a lot more seriously. And that really just changed the whole trajectory of my life. And like I said, like I grew up in church, but it's not until you really make that decision for yourself that you want to follow God until your life starts to change. And mine definitely did. And so that's something I'm very grateful for.
Hmm. Your life message is really about shining the light of Christ to the world. Will you tell us more about why this is so dear to you, why you feel like this is your unique mission?
Yeah, so the thing with any sort of physical difference, especially with dwarfism, I can't put on a coat or a jacket and hide what I look like. I can't just decide that, oh, one day I want to walk out of my house and I don't want people to see me for how God has made me. You can't hide this. This is very apparent when I'm out in public. And I think over time, the more that I learned about what God says about me, that, He does have a very specific plan for my life, just as He has a plan for the next person, that plan includes looking the way that I do. And once I started really embracing that and really just owning my identity as a child of God, like my identity is not in my difference. That is a part of who I am. That is how the outward package looks, but it is not who I am. Like I am a daughter of God. I am loved. I'm set apart. I'm chosen. I'm all these things. But the way that I can live this life that He's given me is in this body He's given me. And so I just really believe that, the Bible says that we're the light of the world, that we all have a light to shine, and each person has a unique light. Like I don't look like you. We don't look like the next person. And so, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a light to shine. And so those are all unique lights that we get to choose to shine into the world. And I can't choose to shine your light. You can't choose to shine mine. But when we do shine them, the world does get brighter and the world needs more light. And that doesn't mean that we have to shine in the same way, but that does mean that we get to, partner with God in the way that He's made us to help make the world brighter while we can. So that's what I'm all about. I love that.
Yeah, so just getting to know you, I think you are shining extra bright. You are super radiant, and I think people are drawn to you. They're drawn into your presence because of that, which means they're drawn to Jesus because He is the light that is shining inside you, and
Mm,
you're unashamedly like shining that. And I love the C.S. Lewis quote. He says, "Don't shine so that others can see you. Shine so that through you others can see Him." And
that's
I,
good.
yeah, I think shining our light, it's really not about us. It's about the
Hmm.
Lord. And sometimes I think we can dim our light, maybe because we're afraid of, people are going to look at us, or we're going to, so often we can play small. And just want to
Hmm.
encourage us that God has not created us to play small. We are not created to hide our light, just like the verse says. We are created to shine it and not to hide it. So I love so much that is your ministry. That's your message. We need more of that for sure. Talk about just how your uniqueness has really been such a big part of your purpose.
Yeah, I think to your point and what you just said just before this was that like, we're called to shine not for ourselves, but for the glory of God. And that doesn't mean that all the time that shining is easy. It doesn't mean that it's easy to face the world. Like we face so much darkness in our day, whether you have a physical difference or not, like we're all different and we all face things in life that are hard and we face things that are unexpected. I know in my life and when I was representing Canada for as long as I did, there were so many times that things are just tough. You're tired. You're showing up to practice when you don't want to. You're doing things that you don't want to. You're meeting, people that, just aren't that nice and that you wish that wouldn't have said certain things. And I think that happens to all of us. And so it's just really remembering that, our purpose is to live the life that God has given us to the best that we can, and He'll take care of the rest. And when we're needing strength, we have His strength. When we need His courage, we've got His courage. When we feel like we're drifting, then that's maybe a good idea to really just hone in on our identity, and our identity is secure. Our identity doesn't change like the world seems to be changing every 5 seconds. And so I think like with my purpose and just really coming back continually to that idea that, God has made me for a purpose. We all have a purpose, and that is to bring glory to God. And we're just going to have different ways of showing that. And so it's just figuring out, how am I going to show it? How am I honoring God? And let's have fun while we're doing this because life's also just meant to be fun. So,
Mm.
mm.
Yeah, and the beauty of embracing the unique story God has given each of us because our
Hmm.
just like we are each different, our stories are so different. And like you
Absolutely.
say, like seizing them, making the most of them. This is our one and only precious, fleeting life. And
Hmm.
I think you're an amazing example of that. So you swam in the Paralympics for, did you say 13 years?
Yes, I did on Canada's national team. It's quite
Yeah.
long enough.
And you traveled all over, and this was your full-time job. This is what you did professionally. So it was a huge part of your life and who you
Hmm.
are. And then I heard that recently you retired. And so, what has this experience been like for you when swimming was such an integral part of who you are and what you've known through your life, and to no longer have that be such a big part of your life? And what did this really teach you about your identity?
Yeah, those are good questions. So I started swimming when I was 11 and I swam all the way until I was 26. And so that's quite a long time to be doing the same thing. And I got pretty good at an early age. And so I went to my first international competition when I was 14, won my first international medal, broke Canadian records quite early on, and got to, travel the world. I got to really experience life. I got to do things that not many young teenage girls get to do, all while representing your country, which is just a huge honor in and of itself. And so I definitely, got to experience a lot of high pressured situations. I had a lot of things that were put on my plate, expectations to perform, expectations to be a high level athlete. And I think what that really taught me, and as an athlete, I guess, like you're not always going to be good. Like you're going to have your highs, you're going to have your lows, you're going to have your plateaus. And I think the first time I really hit my first plateau, it really shook me quite a lot, to be honest. I was very used to just things were going well, and then something happens and all of a sudden it's not going well. And where does that leave you? And that left me with the question of, okay, if swimming isn't going well, does that mean I'm not doing well? And then that's a hard thing. And I think anyone could ask themselves, okay, well, if my friends don't like me, does that mean I'm unlovable? Or if I messed up at school, does that mean that I'm a failure? No, that doesn't mean those things. And what it does mean is that you are a child of God who happens to do the things that you're doing. And when I learned how to separate that from my identity of, I am Danielle who swims, I happen to swim, but I am not Danielle the swimmer. I am first and foremost Danielle, the child of God who happens to swim. And when I made that shift, that really changed the rest of my career, that I could, face setbacks, I could face injuries, I could face not making a team and still be okay, because I know that who I am, I'm good with God. And he's well pleased with me. He's happy with me. He loves me no matter what I achieve in the pool, no matter what I miss out on. My identity is secure. And so going through the later part of my career and then coming into retirement, that was such a crucial thing to remember, was just that, what I've been doing for 13, 15 years, like I'm not going to be doing anymore, but I'm okay, because the Bible says, like, there's a season for everything under the sun. There's a time for this, there's a time for that. And I think we can sometimes forget that life has so many opportunities. And just because one is done doesn't mean that you're finished. Just because that you've been in something for a long time and it happens to be over doesn't mean that your life is over. It means that God has an opportunity now to bring you into something new. And it might look different, it might feel different, it might not be as flashy as, representing Canada, traveling all over the world, but it still has tremendous purpose. And so that's what I would say. I think it really just taught me how to, finish well, but then also embrace what's coming next, and not dwelling or looking back and longing for what was, but remembering what was good, remembering what I learned, and then now stepping into what's coming. So,
You have this radical story
mm,
with about the power of prayer and about listening to God's voice. And it completely blew my mind. And I was like, you have to share this story, Dee, with our community. So yeah, so you with that, will you share this story?
Absolutely, I will. So in 2018, I was living in Montreal, which for any of you don't know, that's like the French part of Canada. So I was living there, I was swimming, and I was going to school, and I was living downtown at the time, and I was walking home alone. It was at night, and I was passing this McDonald's, and there was a homeless man who was standing on the corner, and he was hopped up on drugs. He was not of a sound mind whatsoever, and he saw me, and the moment he saw me, he just started yelling at me. He started saying things that, I'm not going to repeat out loud. They're pretty awful. And he was just saying things like, I can't believe you look this way, like swearing, like, somebody come and tell me I must be on drugs. Like, you look crazy. And I'm like, okay, I look crazy. Like, you look crazy. You're yelling at me right now. And it was scary. Like, everyone started staring at me, and this guy, and he had like tattoos all over his face. He was a scary looking dude. He's just yelling at me, and I didn't know what to do. That had never happened to me before. And so I put my head down and I just kept walking, and I started walking home, and I started crying, and I was like, okay, Dee, like, just get home, just get inside. So I got into my building, went up the steps, keyed into my door, sat on my couch, and I just broke down because who can prepare to be treated that way? I don't think anyone can. Like, who can go about their life expecting to be treated in that way? It was honestly awful, and it really hurt. And I remember I was sitting on my couch, and I was reading this book actually at the time. It was called No More Faking Fine. And it's all about like your gut wrenching prayers to God, that when you cry out to God just in desperation, like he always answers that prayer. So I was like, okay, well, let's see if he answers this, because I don't know what else to do. So I remember looking up at my ceiling, and I just said, God, what the heck? That was not cool. What in the world was that? You made me this way, so you better come down and fix this, because
Mm.
that was not okay. And I was really honest with God, and I just said it how it was. Like, I didn't ask to look this way. I didn't ask to have dwarfism, but you somehow thought that this is what needed to happen, and so you better fix this, because I can't deal with this. And so I said that, and then a few minutes later, I stopped crying, and I thought that God was just going to give me peace in the moment, and that I could go to bed and just move on with my day. But I remember feeling it was like all of a sudden this light bulb moment just went off, and I just felt the Holy Spirit just say to me, go buy him dinner. And I was like, what? I don't think you said that. I really don't think so. So, no. And then I heard it again, and it was like, go back out there and buy him dinner. And I just couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake that thought. And so I grabbed my wallet, put my boots back on, went back outside, and I started praying. And I said, hey, God, if this is you, then he's going to be there. If it's not you, I'll just turn around and go home and pretend this didn't happen. But also, if this is, you're going to have to give me the words to say, because I don't know what I'm doing. And so I went out there, started walking back to that McDonald's. I turned the corner and I see him, and he's there. So I'm like, oh, dang, okay, this is going to happen. As I was walking up to him, I remember he turned around and he saw me again, and he started laughing and pointing at me. And I walked right up to him, and I stuck out my hand and I said, hi, my name's Danielle. Can I buy you dinner? And his jaw just dropped to the floor. It was like one of those cartoon Looney Tunes moments where the character just like was in absolute shock. And he just looked at me and he said, you would do that for me? And I said, yeah, I'll buy you whatever you want. And so we went into this McDonald's, and immediately he just started apologizing. He said he was so sorry for what he said to me, how he treated me, that the drugs that he was on were really messing with his brain, and just he wasn't of sound mind. And I said, I forgive you. It's okay. And so we went into the McDonald's, and for 15 minutes, he just shared his story. He told me where he was from. He told me that he had a wife. He told me that he had kids that he hadn't seen in a long time. And then he told me that we were actually from Vancouver, which is like where I grew up, which is across the country. So we were kind of small world, like we were from the same place. And then we got his food, and I remember I had just started getting used to praying for people out loud. Like, I was really new to taking my faith more seriously. And I felt the Lord tell me, like, hey, you're a Christian, pray for him. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do it. So then I asked him if I could pray for him. And he said, oh, yeah, like I knew God a long time ago. Of course, like, sure, you can pray for me. So in the middle of this McDonald's, this little 4'1" dwarf and this man with tattoos all over his face, like I just laid my hands on him and I prayed for him. And when I left, I felt so close to him and so comfortable that I could have given him a hug. And where 30 minutes earlier, I was scared to walk out my front door, all of a sudden, God had just completely redeemed the situation where He not only gave me peace, but He gave my friend, and his name's Shane, He gave him a meal. And so I found that just so incredible because when we ask God, help me, help my circumstance, help me out, like this is unfair. He does answer those, but he answers them in ways that are a lot bigger than for just ourselves. He helps all his children. He loves me just as much as he loves Shane, even though what Shane said was not great. He still has such good plans for his life, just as he has plans for mine. And so that was a really cool experience. I didn't love it, but in hindsight, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then for the next few weeks, like I would see Shane and we would chat with each other and I would get him food. And then after that, I stopped seeing him. And so I thought that he might have gone off, or even I had thought maybe he had died. I had no idea what happened to him. And then I thought that was just going to be the end of the story, but it's not. And so 5 years later, I've finished swimming. I've moved back across the country. I think it's 2,000 something miles away, separated me from where I was. And I was giving a message at my church that I grew up in. And 5 minutes before I'm about to give this message, Shane walks in the church. And I see him and I was like, what? And we make eye contact and we're both like stunned. And I go up to him and I'm like, it's you. It's you. And he looks at me and he says, I don't remember your name and I don't remember much of my old life, but I remember that you prayed for me. And I just start weeping. I'm crying. I'm like, D, you gotta get it together. Like, you're about to go up and preach. And so I went up, dried my tears. I thanked my years of compartmentalizing my emotions on the national team. Like, I got it together, gave the message, and then Shane and I met up after and we were chatting. And, the craziest thing is that shortly after I prayed for him and God had kind of crossed our paths, his wife came from Vancouver to Montreal, drove across the country to find him and brought him back home. And so he is not only reconciled with his original wife, but he now has a relationship with his two kids that he talked about. And they have recently, just like in this last year, had another baby, and they call her their reconciliation baby. And it was just one of the most insane things that I've ever experienced that, I am I'm still speechless talking about this, and this happened in December. It's just wild how crazy God is and how no one can tell me that God is not real after that. Nobody can tell me that God will not see you through from beginning to end. No one can tell me that their story is too far gone for God to redeem it because of what I've witnessed in this man's life. And I know that I was never entitled to know the end of his story, but it was just such a massive flex almost on God's part of showing me his kindness and allowing me to see the end of what happened with my friend Shane. And just to do it from across the country and to show up in my church I grew up in is just absolutely insane. So, yeah, if anyone out there is questioning if God is real or if you can ever be used by God in some way, you absolutely can. And he absolutely cares so much about you to see your story from beginning to end. Because he did it here, so he does it all the time.
That is one of the most radical stories I have ever heard. It's insane.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. But it is so God. It is
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. the
Yeah.
power of prayer and listening to his voice. Like when you heard that in your spirit, you listened
Mm-hmm.
and you obeyed, and you got to see the fruits of that. And this is the
Yeah,
story I'm sure you're going to continue sharing the rest of your life. And it's an unforgettable story. So thank
for
you so
sure.
much
And it,
for sharing that.
yeah, well, thanks for asking. And I think the crazy thing is the first part of the story is a story on its own. It's a story of, how God can redeem a painful situation, that, responding and being obedient to what he's asking you to do, even when it hurts, like that's powerful in and of itself. But we can also see God as the redeemer of situations, like he redeemed just even my own story of being comfortable in the city, walking around and not being scared. And he redeemed Shane's marriage, his family. He changed the trajectory of his life. And it's all through, just the power of the Spirit and prayer and just being obedient to what God's asking you to do right now. Like, we don't have to know how things are going to turn out. We just have to say yes to what he's asking. And obviously, amazing things can come from that. So it's
Mhm.
quite cool.
Do you,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to say to the girl or woman who feels really unworthy, or she feels like she's never going to measure up to the world standards?
Mm, I would say that, in a world that is just full of just so many things that we can compare ourselves to, so many ideals, so many trends, that you matter to God, that He has created you in the exact way that He needs you to be, that you are not less than, you are not lacking, that you are not anything less than beautiful. You're not anything less than perfect in his eyes. That you are, like we say, like you guys said, you're wonderfully made, that you are made on purpose. And even though that might look different than the next person, that you have so much value in the eyes of the God who made you. And I think it is it's well worth your time and well worth your life investing in learning that truth, because that truth is what's gonna hold you when the world is not
Mm.
nice. That truth and who you are and who God is and how he's made you is gonna be what sustains you. And it's a truth that I had to learn over time, but it is one that has forever changed my life, and I truly believe it will change yours as well.
If you had a megaphone, Dee, and you could talk to every girl and every woman, and they were listening to you right now, what would you want to tell them?
That's a really good question. I don't know if anyone has ever phrased that to me in that way before. Wow. I don't get speechless that often, so that's pretty good. I think I would say just that. I would say that, like you have a light to shine, that the world needs your light, and that you have to choose to shine, that I can't shine your light, you can't shine mine. But when we shine them together, like the world gets brighter and your light is significant. So you better turn that thing on and shine it. That's what I'd say that, but I add a little bit of dramatics to it if there's a megaphone.
I love it. Dee, thank you so much. We're
Thank
really
you.
to meet you and to stay in touch with you. And you clearly have such a beautiful, powerful calling in your life. And God is going to take you on, and already is, but going to take you on a beautiful adventure to share his love and to share the gospel with the world. So I'm really excited to see what he has in store for you. And gosh, we really want to stay in touch with you. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. Thanks again for having me, and let's just continue this adventure of shining our lights.
Yeah. You can find Dee's episode on our website on the podcast page. You can go to wonderfullymade.org. We'll put the link to her podcast there under her episode. And again, we would love for you to join our new online gathering place. We are just committed to making this a really life-giving space for you. And if you swap like 20 minutes from scrolling on social media for 20 minutes in this new app, in our gathering place. Like we really think that you're going to feel refreshed and encouraged. So Dee, thank you again. And everyone listening, we're so grateful that you would take the time to listen to this podcast. And I selfishly feel even if no one was listening, I would still want to do this just for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't believe the amazing women I get to talk to. So thanks,
That's
friends,
great.
for listening, and we'll see you next episode.